This podcast contains explicit adult content, mature themes, and candid conversations about sex, dominance, power exchange, and ethical non-monogamy. It is intended for audiences 18 and over only. Listener discretion is advised. The views expressed by our guests are theirs alone and do not necessarily reflect the views or values of the hosts, producers, or affiliated brands. The Bull Brotherhood Podcast is for educational, entertainment, and empowerment purposes only. Nothing in this podcast should be interpreted as legal advice, medical guidance, or psychological counseling. We speak from experience, not credentials. Always practice consent, respect the boundaries of others, and follow local laws. If you're not comfortable with frank talk about sex, kink, dominance, or emotional power, this probably isn't the show for you. But if you're ready to step into your masculine edge and embrace a lifestyle that demands mastery, welcome to the Brotherhood.
Welcome to the Bull Brotherhood Podcast, where we talk power, pleasure, and the art of dominance in ethical non-monogamy. This is not your average lifestyle podcast. This is for men who lead, men who master, and men who leave a lasting impression. If you're here, you're not just curious. You're ready to elevate. So to all the bulls, hotwives, stags, and open-minded explorers, we see you. Let's go. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to another informative episode of the Bull Brotherhood Podcast. I'm the man with the plan, the Sigma male himself, Brian Morgan, along with the other members of my podcast team, the lovely Siren. Say hello.
Hello.
How you doing tonight, sweetie?
I'm doing great.
Wonderful, wonderful. And of course, my brother from another mother, I call him nephew, the man himself, Socrates. What's good, baby?
What's good? What's going on, y'all? Excited about this episode.
I can't call it. I am too, and I know you are especially because, ladies and gentlemen, tonight we're going to be talking about a topic dealing with, of course, Socrates' favorite topic, which is ethical non-monogamy. The categories, well, let me tell you, the square, the circle, and the triangle. If I say that, what are you guys probably thinking about first and foremost?
Ethical
And I'm asking a question.
geometry.
Ethical geometry. Oh, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Well, this is like something, ladies and gentlemen, to think about. It's like, what is your dynamic? Where do you fall into this world that we live and love so much? The square. Think about a square, 4 sides. So when you think about 4 sides, you think about what? 4 people or 2 couples. So that falls more into what? Say the swingers category, maybe?
Yep.
Yes or no? Exactly. You think about your circle. A circle is what? It's open-ended, correct? I guess I'm saying that right. Open. So if you are let's say a stag vixen couple, or let's say stag vixen couple, you're pretty much open, or poly. You're pretty much open to all the possibilities. Okay. And if you're a bull who is trying to, get inside of that circle, you need to be pretty versatile. And of course, last but not least, the one that I gravitate to the most is the triangle. That's those 3 sides. So you have what? You have your bull, you have your hotwife, and you have your cuckold or stag. Okay? So that's what we're concentrating on tonight. And I like what Siren said. Ethical non-monogamy geometry. I love it. So let's get started. I'm gonna pass the torch on to Socrates if he wants to break down each one of these topics a little bit more. Go ahead, huh?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So,
nephew.
yes, sir. Nice. I'm really excited about this, and we're not sure which order these episodes come in, but I did have a debate with my mentors and my brothers and my round table brothers, on the first episode of the commission, which is coming soon. But we were talking about the triangle dynamic and how our perspective on the plight and the concerns and issues and challenges that the cuckold relationship has, or when there's a bull involved between one couple, whether that couple be the male be, well, the male's going to be a cuckold or a stag. He's going to enjoy watching his wife or enjoy his wife being pleased, and he has a lot of compersion. And then you're going to have the hotwife or the cuckoldress who, obviously loves that dynamic. And so basically what we're saying is this is not law or facts. These is our paradigm, So the Bull Brotherhood is about talking about all things ethically non-monogamous, but from our perspective as bulls. And then we have my lovely wife, Siren, who wants to put, always wants to give us, or we want her to give a femme perspective. So we're going to start with the square. So the basic principles of the square is equal sides, right? Equal angles, stability through balance, and mirrored exchange, right? So what we're basically saying is, when you're a swinger, right, there's an umbrella, and we call that umbrella the ethical non-monogamous umbrella. That means that everybody who believes in consent, ethics, everyone who believes in disclosure and keeping everybody informed and doing the right thing, you're in the ethical non-monogamy umbrella. And under that umbrella, there's a lot of dynamics like swingers, polyamorous people, right? The cuckold dynamic, bulls, open relationships, polyamorous, relationship anarchy, all those things. People who anybody who doesn't believe that monogamy is the only way to go. So when it comes to the square, it's a paradigm or way of thinking. And the dynamics that we believe are under that. And yes, y'all, as a nerd, I had ChatGPT do a lot of research for me. So y'all know how I do. So for us, it's about swingers, swaps, and parallel play, right? So Siren, what do you think of when you think of the square paradigm and, the whole swinger, swapping and parallel paradigm when it comes to ethical non-monogamy?
I just think of couples that are, wanting to do the lifestyle 100% together. They want to find another couple that they can vibe with and play with, and it's a four-sided connection. That's what I think of.
What about you, Unc? What's your perspective on it?
Here again, the couples got to be on the same page, and the square is all about the couple first and foremost. As a bull, this is probably the dynamic that I stay away from the most, because this is, we feel kind of limited, unless we're like invited into this, like say for instance, invited to a party, and we know that we're gonna get there, and they're already waiting for me to come in and say meet somebody and have a good time. We feel kind of limited, feel kind of left out. So this, like I said, this benefits more of those couples, and what the swinger dynamic is all about, more than it does the bull.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the things we want our listeners to know is we're not trying to pigeonhole you, or, I know some people don't like labels because they feel limited. This is not that. These are guiding principles to kind of help you think and process these things and simplify it. Look, we're having a podcast because we believe that, we can crank out 1 to 2 a week explaining the intricate details and the large, dynamic of this lifestyle. But, thinking of it in these squares kind of gives you a guideline, right? So some of the things is like, it's about two couples engaging with each other, right? And when I think about it is, I know swingers who, they're going to want a unicorn to come in, right? And play with them. They might even, and a lot of times it's more about unicorns than single guys. But I do know this, as far as our dynamic, because we'll talk, which we believe our dynamic fits under the circle paradigm. Our dynamic, she can have a guy that I'm not really vibing with, like I don't even like, or I might not think he's attractive. When I'm a dude, who cares what I think about that? Well, I feel like swingers, or when I went through the swinger process, it was more like, okay, we can bring a single guy in, but we both have to like him. We both have to interact with him, because it's going to be about you two as a couple playing with that guy. And that's not a square, but it has to be squared in your mind, right?
Let me say this, nephew. If a couple invites you, as let's say you're their boyfriend, they invite you to a swingers event, trust and believe you've already been vetted, not only by your couple, but at least one or two more couples that are going to that event. You know what I mean? They've already met you, maybe they've already played with you before. So you know that, hey, you got at least two or three couples, that you're gonna be good with at the event. Um, if you're just going there just to follow your girl and her husband, then like I said, you're probably gonna be a big spectator. You're gonna be a big spectator. You'll watch them or watch her, but you probably won't have a great time.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I agree. And also it's a squared paradigm because it's reciprocal energy, right? Like when you're in that phase, and a lot of times people go through a phase of being swingers like we did because it's really hard to find a four-way connection, right? And then even though, let's say you're like, okay, we're not going to look for couples, we're going to look for, a unicorn. Well, since you're not Stag and Vixen, that unicorn is not going to run off with the husband, right? You guys aren't playing separately. Usually the swinger or squared paradigm, they want to be completely involved, like Siren said, really playing off of each other, and really it's about each individual making sure that their loved one is, involved and happy with it, right? So it's like when you want to make sure it's reciprocal, you have to concern yourself about the likes and dislikes and concerns and vibe for your wife as well as your husband, or vice versa. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, right? One of the things that it's often shallow but safe. And that's not a negative thing. It means like it's not poly in the sense that you don't go emotionally deep. It's not like Stag Vixen. Our dynamic is very complicated, and there's so many ways we can go with it. And one of my lifestyle mentors was like, you really have 4 different dynamics if you really drill down to it. And we won't get into that now, but I agree. It also emphasizes. Go ahead, huh?
But you guys haven't really identified as swingers for a long time, have you?
Well, we've never been,
We've only had the 4-way connection work like once, and maybe
well, 1.5 because I messed up the first one.
we've never had any repeat business with another couple, and
Okay.
maybe at parties, but maybe 1 or 2 times at Sapphire Club, but
Mhm.
It was only, there was one successful one, and I don't know if we talked about this in an episode, but I messed it up because of my jealousy. That's when I found out I was madly in love with this.
Then we played with that couple, the other couple from the Pacific Northwest that we met at Sapphire. We played with them a couple times, but then they had their own challenges to work out, nothing to do with us.
Oh yeah, that's
So-
right. Yeah.
And that was working, okay. It wasn't 100 for me, but I usually end up on the short end of the dick.
Yeah.
With the full swab.
Yeah.
So that's why we kind of moved away from it, because it's just challenging for me to get what I want and need out of that too, because we want it to be good for everyone.
I know my family. They still go to what I call vanilla lifestyle events, regular swinger events, and she goes to support him. He may play, he may not play, but usually he will play. But she's to the point now though that she is strictly Hotwife BBC material. I mean, she may go there as a dominant bisexual, and play with the ladies like she just did recently, playing with several, but that was pretty much all that she did. She didn't do anything else. And he played, then they came back home. So I just found it very, very, I tell them all the time, I was like, it would be hard for me to go with them to an event. I could go, but I know that I would be just there, just in as a big cheerleader for them. Me, I really probably would not connect with a whole lot of people. So it sounds like it's a whole lot of how do I say it, rolling the dice. You know what I mean? When you go to those events, because like I said, you two are very, very good looking. All right. And I know attractiveness is the first and foremost thing. And sometimes you don't find that, or you may talk to somebody, I guess, and the connection isn't there with one. So, and just the square is square for me. In other words.
Yeah. Well, then it's hard for Queen of Spades to find the full swap dynamic. There's not as many interracial couples.
Thank you.
And so I think that's is the challenging part.
Yeah, I think she said it was two black guys at this event the other week. Just two. And I think one.
And that's not even enough for her, right?
Yeah, no.
Knowing your baby girl a little bit.
Yeah, and then she now knows the definition. She knows the definition of like quality. So she was like, baby, no, it wasn't even, it wasn't worth my time. So because I asked her, I was like, you didn't tell me you didn't get you some? She was like, nope, I did not. It's like not quality. So she has come a long way. Let's say that much. But yeah, they I don't know if I could necessarily go with them to a whole bunch of those events. I just can't see it. But the next one, the circle, if we're finished with the square, the circle is that's very intriguing to me. It's very intriguing because we can blend in as bulls, or we can fuck it up as bulls. So I'll let y'all start that off.
Yeah, yep. So the circle principle is open flow, right? So the principles of this shape, and why we decided on that is because there's no beginning and no end and no center. That's the biggest thing. There's no center, right? The power of the circle is in continuity, freedom, and fluidity. And I love that, right? So in a circle, there's no actual real point, right? So the point is open and flowing. And these dynamics, in our opinion, covers polyamory, open relationships, relationship anarchy, fluid bonded groups, which I actually don't even know what that really means. I'll probably look that up.
I know what it means.
Oh, what is
fluid bonded groups? That's like that polyamorous polycool that we met. There's like two couples. They're married.
They're closed.
They're married. They're not closed.
Oh, okay.
They're fluid bonded as far as like the four of them play without protection. So you could have as many people as you wanted in a fluid bonded group, and then everybody else they play with protection. So, but they've agreed that the four of them are fluid. Yeah.
And also Stag and Vixen dynamics like cars, right? So partners may play separately, together, or in a constellation style relationship. So I like that. So, I really like this one because the circle just represents the openness of it. It represents the fact that because there is no, technically in a circle, there's a non-visible point in the center, right? But there is no point. And so that just means it's fluid to allow the dynamics to figure things out for themselves. And I think that's the most important part. That's what is for us. We just happen to really love me as being a bull, a married bull, and Siren also dipping her foot into the cuck sitting end of it, and she's really loving that, and we're loving that dynamic. But we flowed. We can work in a swap situation, right? We can work in just a unicorn that I might go out and play with by myself, or a unicorn will bring to us as a couple. We can flow in and out of just swinger couples. And
I like to flow into the threesome with you and another guy, but it doesn't.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I'll talk about it. It doesn't often work out very well because unless the guy just really knows my Socrates, well, if he feels comfortable with him, anytime we've tried that in a new situation, the guy usually isn't able to work his magic with Socrates in the room. So Socrates usually, if we're at our house, then he usually goes out to the living room, watches some Star Wars, has some snacks, a nice little nap, while me and the single guy play. So I would, and it's worked out a handful of times now to have all three of us together, but it's not disappointing by any means. It's just something that I'm like, that would be cool to do more often.
Let me ask, why doesn't it work with the guy? Does he look at Socrates and he's intimidated by him, or?
And it's not necessarily dick size, because there's been guys that have a bigger dick than Socrates, and still it's just like, it's just the power. And Socrates does not, he doesn't overwhelm the situation. As we know,
I keep telling you, it's the aura. You hear me talk about that all the time. It's Socrates' charisma. Okay, Socrates is totally and absolutely confident in his relationship with you all.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he knows that he is the king. He knows that you are his queen. Nothing is going to get between you guys. Nothing. I don't care what you do sexually or whatever. Nothing. It's never going to become emotional. It's never going to become anything other than just that role playing at that time, or that scene, as I call it, or encounter. That's a better word. That encounter at that time. So, when he walks in, and then, hell, he's totally comfortable because it's his lady. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can be my total self. It's my wife, So yeah, the guy comes in, and I can see him getting nervous. I can see the gentleman getting nervous.
And we really do our best to set it up. Yeah. So it's not like send the door. Yeah. What?
Yeah.
I think the second or third time around, it's easier. But the first time, too, it's like we usually make dinner for people when they come over. We go in the hot tub for a while, hang out, have a drink. We do all of that before we get to play. I don't think there's been a guy that's walked in the door where like, hey, drop your pants, let's go.
And that goes right into what I was gonna, say. If that bull knocks on your door thinking that he's gonna come in and just balls to the walls, we going at sex, then he is fucked from the jump. All right. There has to be some verbal, I call it verbal judo. There has to be some great communication. Okay, some great communication. That bull has to adapt. Okay, he has to be able to look and see how like happy you guys are, how you guys interact with each other, how, let's say, you're touchy-feely or you talk to each other, and then he just blends in. He blends in. That makes him comfortable. That makes you comfortable, Siren, and it damn sure makes Socrates comfortable when they can jaw jack back and forth, and then you take it a little extra. Okay, then don't put your dick out. Just start with some petting. I call it light petting, touching, feeling, right, rubbing, wrap your arms around, then go to kissing, and then let it build and build and build. Then you have a great encounter.
Yeah,
Damn, I broke that down.
you sure did.
So that's kind of what the hot tub. That's kind of what the hot tub part is like all about, is getting the comfortable, and then you're feeling under the water, nobody's watching what you're doing, and you're sneaking.
Exactly.
You know what's so funny about the word petting is that I grew up super conservatively, and that was something that we're like, because abstinence was preached, and it was like, beware of petting. So it's funny to hear it in a positive way now, like, oh, let's just start out with some petting. Sorry. How times change.
I really do think there's a myriad of reasons. One, a lot of these guys are used to white couples, white men. Two, I don't know what this is, and we're gonna have an episode about this. There's not a lot of I don't personally know a lot of black stags, right? I can count on one hand the black stags that I know. So a lot of guys, and then a lot of guys are used to their husbands either not being able to, not wanting to, or wanting something different, or just wanting that variety for their wives. They're not used to another 6 foot tall, totally confident,
Exactly.
experienced bull
Exactly.
with, above average dick who's like, I got it handled, but I just have an insatiable wife. So, you know what I mean? And so my energy in the room, like you're saying, my aura is not
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm going to sit in the corner like a cuck and I want you to please my wife, or I'm going to join in, but you're bringing the virality or you're bringing the energy or you're bringing the variety. No, I'm like, bruh, my wife can handle 3-4 at a time. You know what I mean? So help a brother out,
Yeah. But let me say this though, even if you did sit and just watch, here again, your aura, the way you are, the confidence, you know what I mean? That the average bull would look at you and be like, okay, I don't see no like reaction from you. All right. Like with me looking at Lindsay. You know what I mean? I'm there. I'm very, very supportive, very, very vocal. You know, some guys might sit there and they don't say a freaking doggone word, and that can intimidate the bull. They can throw him off his game. But like I said, the aura is everything. The aura is everything. Here again, that's why I say the circle for the bull. He needs to come in first and foremost. He needs to be very, very intelligent. To play in the circle, you need to be kind of an experienced guy. Like you've been in it for a little while. I'm not saying you're a master of anything, but you need to have dotted some I's and crossed some T's in the lifestyle, okay, before you get into that dynamic.
So yeah, no, that was all I had for as far as that's concerned. Before we move on to the next one, let's talk about some key traits for the circle. So basically, I love these things: autonomy and personal agency. Right. So in the circle, it's way more compared to the square. It's way more about individual autonomy and agency. In other words, my voice matters. Individually, what I want to do individually needs to be taken into consideration. Whereas the square, it's more of like we're making sure everybody is on an equal plane and getting their needs in an equal way. And it doesn't have to be equal that night, right? Like sometimes you can be in a square dynamic, say, you know what, well, I'm gonna make it a little bit more about my wife tonight, right? Or make it more about my husband, or we're really gonna wow this unicorn, right? But at the same time, what you're really coming from is the paradigm of everybody has equal agency and equal autonomy. Whereas the circle, it's individual, emotional depth and romantic potential. So in the circle, it's a lot more open, whereas like open, but not a rule. So like for me and Siren, we are not poly. And so that door is not open, right? But it's way more open than it would be in a square dynamic. In other words, like if it comes about and we're ready in that stage of our life and we've discussed it a million times, we've got our rules down and we know what the parameters are, that's something we can explore, but we're not. And then the last one, versatility and roles. That's my favorite part, right? So for example, bulls, stags, secondaries, lovers, friends with benefits. In the circle paradigm, it's versatile, right? It's not 100% set what the bull's doing or what the stag's doing or what the hot wife is coming from, or it can be things like open, friends with benefits, right? There are poly relationships where they'll bring me in as a bull, not because they're a cuckold relationship, but they have their boyfriend, but they just want a guy that they can bring in as a friends with benefits. I beat it up. I respect them. And I'm an experienced guy. So a lot of times I'm talking kind of thuggish or rough, but I'm an experienced guy, right? So I'll come in and give them that experience. But in a poly relationship, they understand with this dynamic, we're not getting into an emotional state. We're not going to have an emotional relationship, right? But I'm going to come in as a friend with benefits, as a bull. We're going to have a scene. We're going to have fun. And then I'm going to bounce, right?
But it could develop though.
But it could develop.
Just say that. It could develop. It could develop. All right. That just depends on that bull that you pick. You know what I mean? If he knows how to keep it a certain way, and the friends with benefits way, okay, great. But if there's that real connection, that real deep connection between bull and, wife, it could turn into something else. All right. And I know what I'm talking about.
Oh, I know you did. That's why we got you here, huh? Over 30 years of experience.
Mm-hmm.
So the biggest thing to me is being versatile and emotional intelligence. So when a bull enters in a circle dynamic, his opportunity is to show his leadership and his emotional intelligence. It's not about dominance. It's about adapting. That's Unk's favorite word. Supporting
Yes,
and
sir.
sometimes staying. In other words, your staying ability or your ability to be stable and a rock when you're entering in that circle dynamic. The crazy thing is a lot of times there's chaos because it's so fluid, because the roles are so versatile. And when a bull comes into those dynamics, he brings great leadership, not dominance, right? So he's going to help lead that dynamic or whoever's in that dynamic in a way where they're having a great time, right? And he is a master of communication in this situation, or needs to be, so that he's making sure that these versatile roles are still communicating when things change. Does that make sense, y'all? Like, Siren, what do you think? Your perspective on the bull, because right, we're a bull brotherhood. This is a perspective from a bull, right? So if a bull is entering a circle dynamic where there's a lot of changing dynamics, there's a lot of fluid roles being involved. It's like it's not centered on one or the other, and it's also not like as fixed as like the triangle is.
Right.
Like, so what's your perspective on a good bull entering into the circle dynamic?
Well, just someone too that, in any dynamic in the lifestyle, it's really important to have great communication. So whoever he's involved with, he needs to make sure that he's really on top of the communication. And he can be a leader in that area too, is just reaching out, making sure that everyone's on the same page of, what everyone's role is in that circle. For me, I have certain requirements. Like I probably have more requirements for the bull playing with me solo than my husband has for them. Like, I require that they give him a call, that and even though my husband's like, you don't have to run this by me, blah, blah, blah. I want to establish some authority in that. So they need to be respectful of whatever dynamic that woman is in, and, kind of check, hey, is there a man that I need to check in with, or a woman, whatever dynamic they're in. And then I think, just being flexible. There's going to be, there may be some emotional ups and downs with couples. A bull will have to, just be receptive to whatever's going on with them and be able to have some flexibility there. And, just the more kind of laid back they are in that area, then they can be, adapting. Then the more dominant they can be later. So if they're a little more laid back on the front end, but good with the communicating, you can be laid back, but then also be assertive, if that makes sense. It's a healthy balance right there.
That you should select should have a whole arsenal of questions about what you like, what
Mhm.
you desire, what the boundaries are, okay, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's what that requires. That's what that communication mastery to me means.
Right.
All right. I would come in with a barrage of questions. You know what I mean? To make everybody, to let both of you guys know that, hey, I'm here for you. You know what I'm saying? This is about your experience. We are here to have, I want you guys to have the experience with me. Okay, because this is probably, I would say the circle is closest to the boyfriend experience, as I call it, without being a boyfriend, but that's what he's there to do. Give you a boyfriend experience and then roll out. But if he misses, here again, if he doesn't dot every I, cross every T when he's questioning you guys, then he messes the thing up. He has the potential to mess everything up. But if you guys are on that same key to music with the communication, I mean, talking, and yes, Siren, I would say, I would tell you, if you don't mind, please relay something to your husband, or is it okay if I relay this to your husband? So we're all on the same page.
Right. And I pretty much hand over, his phone number quickly, if I plan to meet up with someone. And, and he's like, well, if they're coming to our house, he's like, they don't have to call me, but I just require it. I just do the same steps every time. That way it's something that's muscle memory for me. It establishes that authority of him being my leader and my king. And then, then establishes that they need to respect him before they can get to the other prizes.
This ain't about me coming in as a bull and trying to dominate anything or show dominance.
Yeah.
No.
Be respectful until it's time to be disrespectful, is what we like to say.
Exactly.
And there's, and in the lifestyle too, women, need a variety of the communication and the time spent. And I'm a little bit on the lower end of, how much I need to get involved with someone.
You mean at the bottom?
Hey, I'm trying to be like, man, just throw me under the bus.
You don't you don't require much at all. I mean, and that's not meaning low standards. She's looking, y'all, if y'all can see her face, I would have been dead. What I mean by that,
We have to edit this part out because there's about to be a death.
it's about to be some furniture moving around in there.
I can't lift over 10 pounds, so you're lucky right now.
You can pull that trigger finger.
Yeah, I think my gun only weighs.
What I mean by that, ladies and gentlemen, is Siren can tell she has an incredibly keen sense of her intuition about people. Now, I ask her to take more time with the ladies because she is my slut secretary, but with men, she could tell instantly. And so once she can tell and she feels comfortable with you, let's go. It doesn't mean you're not going to go through those processes of, you got to talk to my husband, let me find out if you're an idiot, all of those things. Let's have some vibes, right? But I'm just saying, like, the cool thing about her is she's not going to take a week, a couple of days to figure it out. She's going to know almost right away. And then if the door's open, let's go. See if you can get over these hurdles. And if you do, then you're good. But what I like about her is, you ain't got to take a week for that.
They're not very big hurdles sometimes. And I would say at events, it's even, less. It's like I've told guys, I said at the last event I was at, I said, you understand that there's women out here that need more time and attention from you before they can get to the play part. I want you to give that to them. But know that I'm here to be, a treat, I guess. I don't require as much, especially at events. So it's like, if we're talking vibing, maybe 10, 15 minutes, I'm ready to go. I know that quickly. Other women need longer, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's kind of nice to have a little bit of everything. There's the women that need a longer, deeper connection. And then there's some women like me that are just quicker. We're a snack. So, and we like that. There was one guy at a pool in Fort Lauderdale, and he barely got in the pool, and then we started making out like within minutes. I was like, let's go to the daytime playroom. And he was like, I just got in the pool. I said, come on, just give me 15 minutes, and he's like, oh, okay. He was relieved. He's like, oh, we can go play for 15 minutes and we can come right back. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So we went and did that. He knows he didn't have to give me 2 hours, and so I just started explaining that to guys. I'm like, I like a longer experience, but hey, if we got 15 minutes, I'm still gonna have a good time.
Nothing against that, brother.
I'm willing. Let's put it that way. Not easy, but willing.
Yeah, I understand. I know, not easy. Yeah, I like that. Open. You're open. You're open to all the possibilities. Open all possibilities. But you see, that's, and here again, that's the difference between those guys who are, I still call them anxious, compared to say some of the more seasoned ones who like to break you down a little bit. You know what I mean? And not necessarily play with you, but just have you thinking like, like what's going on in that guy's head why hasn't he, taken me to the room already, or this and that. So that's just the difference between, say, myself, the season one, and some of the guys that go to Splash. Yeah, that's why I kind of look at the guys who go to Splash as they're pretty much BBC bulls. A lot of them are. They're not the ones that are, the more season ones. But yeah, that's another conversation. Keep it going, y'all.
Yeah, that's another episode. So I just wanted to say this, and then we'll move on to the triangle. The reason for this podcast, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, is mastery. And you'll see it. This is a lifestyle mastery podcast. That means if you are a seasoned vet and you've been doing this for years, we want to have something for you to even sharpen your skills. But if you're new, look, this lifestyle is so amazing, and there's so many high level experiences you can, but like anything in life, it takes work to get there. And then we'll talk about Kanai, our commitment, which is constant and never ending improvement. And that's what we're committed to. The squad that we have and the brothers that we hang around with, these are all seasoned brothers. I'm 8 years in, almost 9, and I'm the junior of the bunch. And this is tools that we're giving you guys so that you can come into any one of these dynamics and just be powerful and have really great experiences. Because, man, this last event we went to, there was tears. There was tears because they were so happy and they got what they wanted, and they had license to be themselves, and they had good quality bulls that understood that. Man, the relationships you form, the experiences you have, knowing that, it's unprecedented, man, and it's unparalleled. And we want you guys to have access to that. That's why we're doing this shit, man.
And that's absolutely beautiful, because they're going to go back and tell one other couple, and that couple's going to tell another couple, and so on and so on and so on. And the bulls are going to go back and make the brotherhood even stronger by telling other brothers. So that's what we're looking for. That's why we're doing this podcast. All right. Because like I said, having been in this since I was 26, 27 years old, it is time for me now to pass the torch on, to other younger brothers, and keep this family, keep this lifestyle going and going and going and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Because, ladies and gentlemen, whether or not you know it, although still considered, underground, the Hotwife, bull cuckold world is huge. It is freaking huge. It is all over the United States. It is all over the world. Movies now. I've seen more damn movies in the last year involving this lifestyle. Okay. And so that should tell you it's bigger and bigger and bigger. And we're just happy to be able to come in and share some of our experiences and some of our knowledge. And we hope that you gravitate to us, to this podcast, to Siren's podcast. Can't wait for her to to really, really get into it with hopefully my lady Lindsay. And we're just gonna keep this thing rolling. We're going to keep it rolling. And this is a beautiful world to live in. Let me tell you, a beautiful world to live in. Again, and I speak for, Siren and Socrates, because they are my family. Philip and Lindsay, of course, my family. But these are some of the happiest couples I've ever met in my life. Period. Facts. All right. Now I'm going to shut up so we can keep going. But you guys just think about that.
On to the triangle, y'all. On to the triangle. The power dynamic, y'all. So
this is the one I love.
Yeah. So the principles behind that is the 3 fixed points connected by tension, right? The triangle is the most stable shape under pressure because each point supports the other. Now, this is where the big debate you're going to hear with the commission. And this is where the controversy comes in. Our opinion is not the same shared opinion of the community. So we're going to talk about it because I believe in this strongly. And the most important thing for me is that there are 3 points connected by tension, connected by, wanting to support each other, and equality. And I want Unc to speak on this. And why do you, I know, Unc, you share this opinion because I've, sat under your fit and listened to your wisdom on it. And so I want you to kind of speak on that. And then you can kind of flow into whatever else you want. But I really want to hear that part.
Okay, of course, I'm gonna start with what the bull brings, to this. The Here again, the bull can bring his dominance into this, but at the same time, here again, he has to bring versatility into it. He has to bring emotions. He has to bring, here's my favorite word again, adaptability. That this triangle requires strength, intuition. The bull leads, the cuck. He's, I hate to say the word submissive, but he yields his strength. In other words, and then the hot wife, she flourishes. She gets the best of both worlds right here. She gets to see her husband over there, loving seeing her being pleased, not only physically but also emotionally. Then the bull, he's getting the best of both worlds because he's having that connection with the wife, and he's also having that connection with the husband. You know what I mean? They can go from not communicating a whole lot to communicating, like almost like best friends. So this is a three-way. This goes from that bull going from the BBC bull, let's say the versatile guy, the boyfriend, and then it may lead to him becoming part of a throuple, i.e. myself. I just defined what the hell I am. So, that's why I say I gravitate to the triangle more than anything. And I love it because everybody here definitely is on the same page. Open-minded, honesty, communication, et cetera, et cetera. So take it from there, y'all.
I love that. The bull leads, the stag or cuck relinquishes, and the wife flourishes. Oh, that's so dope. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness, that's so dope. Yeah, so one of the things that I like to focus on is the fact that in this dynamic is, cuckolding, hot wife, stag, vixen. These dynamics are distinct roles in polarity. And like my boy Michael C says, the hot wife or the cuckoldress flourishes. That's why it's wife centric. Some people look at my dynamic, damn near play as much as your wife. Well, I'm like, no. Number one, it's really hard for a man to keep up with a wife if they are, equally open to play. But number two, it's about the wife flourishing, right? I'm leading for one reason, for the wife to flourish. The cuck is relinquishing for one reason, the wife to flourish. And I love that because that's what it's all about. So it's a paradigm of making it wife-centric so that the wife can flourish. I love that, And then the bull and the cuck, stag, and the hot wife form a powerful, aligned trio, right? For me,
I eat a throuple.
That's right.
I eat a throuple if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah. For me, they're all equal points. That's why it's a triangle. And they have equal challenges. They might have unequal specific things that they're dealing with, right? Like a bull doesn't have to consult with his, wife or husband, at least in that dynamic. So I'm a married bull. And if I go to a couple, and they don't want cuck sitting, then my wife's not involved. She might schedule it and that's it, right? But I'm going into that dynamic and I'm going there to make sure she's connected, right? To make sure she's aligned in this trio. But I have unique challenges, the cuck has unique challenges and the hot wife has unique challenges. She has to worry about her cuck in that situation. She has to make sure his needs are met. He's worried about the wife. He's making sure that her needs are met. You know what I mean? But we all have equal challenges. I don't subscribe to this mentality that, oh, well, there's a lot more bulls out here that ain't right. Well, that's true only because right now the focus is on the bull trying to get the wife. He has to jump through all the hurdles and overcome obstacles and, all of those things to try and make that wife feel comfortable and the cuck feel comfortable. But when you get more into this lifestyle and you start knowing the details of these dynamics, not every cuckold couple is awesome. Not every cuckold couple is perfect. Not every couple has their shit together, right? They bring baggage to the table that the bull has to navigate, as well as flaky bulls, right? Bulls claiming to be dominant and they have no idea what dominance is, right? Right? So it's like we all deal with unique challenges. Not to take away from the cuckold's challenges, not to take away from the stress that they have to deal with and the issues they have to deal with, but it's more of like, hey, as a bull, I don't want to be treated like, oh, okay, Mr. Mocha talks about this a lot. When a cuckold couple is concerned about privacy, well, we're professionals. We don't want to share our pictures. We don't want to take the risk of you knowing our faces. Well, hey, guess what? I'm a professional too. I own businesses. I'm, involved in my community. I live in a conservative community, right? I don't want my face out in the streets. Neither do you. We're both taking a risk here, right? So I understand your concerns. Oh, well, my wife is shy or my wife's this. That's great. I might be shy too. Just because I'm a bull doesn't mean there aren't introverted bulls. Doesn't mean there aren't shy in the beginning bulls, right? So, that's my whole thing. It's like, it's equal, right? There's defined roles. That's the difference, right? In the circle, there isn't defined roles. For us, it's dominant, and we'll say submissive or relinquisher, and radiant feminine. I love that. Radiant feminine. Those are defined roles. Doesn't mean, again, we're not trying to pigeonhole y'all. Y'all do what you want, right? But what that means is that in a triangle or cuckold relationship, right, we know, at least in context of that scene with the bull and the wife, or or that cuckoldress, right? There's a dynamic there where he's going to lead her, right? So sexual polarity and intentional imbalance, right? In order to create any kind of attraction, whether it's vanilla or lifestyle, there has to be tension. There has to be sexual polarity, right? Because if you think about North Pole and South Pole, right, those polarities push against each other, which creates gravity, creates an attraction to each other, right? That's what you're doing. As a bull, you're coming in dominant or leadership energy, right? And she's given the polarity of feminine or or relinquishing that control to that dominant, right? That's a polarity that you want. The biggest thing is compersion. Sometimes there's humiliation, or even devotion may exist, right? So there's devotion from the bull sometimes. There's definitely devotion from the cuck. And there's devotion from the hotwife or cuckoldress to their husband. But the biggest thing is compersion, right? Like, I think, and I want your opinion on this, Unc. I think a good bull needs a little bit of compersion to see that couple. Like the last event we went to see the smiles and the radiance in the cuck and the hotwife's faces, that was compersion for me. But what do you think, Unc?
If that isn't what the bull wants to see every time he has that encounter, then he should get out of the business, because that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. It's never about you. Okay, I think I've told you before, nephew, I'm pleased when the couple reaches out to me, when the couple shows interest in me, when the couple says, hey, we want to meet. I'm pleased right there. So now it's all about that couple. And it's not just about the wife. Okay, I'm going to know within 5 to 10 minutes whether or not she and I are going to have a good time. But I want to make that husband equally as happy in his role. If he's a real cuck, then I want him to have that real cuck experience. Okay, if he wants to be, slightly humiliated or whatever, then I'm gonna make sure that that happens. But at the end of the night, when I'm getting ready to leave them, I want them both to be able to come up to me and be like, we enjoyed you and we want to see you again. That's the ultimate bull experience right there in a nutshell. So if you're not trying to do that, guys, when you're out there, you're in the wrong field.
Siren, what do you
You're
think?
in the wrong field.
Do you think a good bull can not have that compersion feeling? Like, some of the ones that a little bit more comfortable with me leaving the room. What do you think?
Like, what's the point? It's just very self-serving if that's the only reason that you're there is for yourself, Um, it was very fun, I would just say, to be at that event and to hear from the bulls, like, playing with the other dynamics, like, just how excited that they were. And they talked probably actually more about the cuck and, like, how cool it was to, like, it be in the experience with them even more than some of, like, the women, because and just, like, how happy they were to be able to, like, be of service to that couple. It was just you could tell the enjoyment definitely hit all points of that triangle, and so the ones that, I've run into that are very comfortable with that, it seems like they're super comfortable and they enjoy all aspects of that, or there's the ones that just are green and clueless, and then they yuck other people's yums, which we don't like anybody who yucks someone's yum anyways. So it's like, you might not understand it. Like, I had, remember, I think on a different episode, I told you guys, like, I used to think that someone putting a cuck in a cage was like a literal cage, like a human-sized dog crate or something. And then that's just ignorance, right? So I had ignorance, but I was just like, I need to find out more about this because I just don't really know anything about it. And then the more I know about it, the more beautiful and the more appreciative I am of all of that. And then just being around more people like that, not being in that dynamic myself, I just was able to have, an even greater appreciation for the dynamic and just really enjoy, talking to all points on the triangle and how they related to each other. It was really cool.
Let me ask you guys this. Did you notice the interaction between the bulls as far as communicating with each other, like say after an encounter or just like during, say, breakfast or lunch or out at the pool? Were they like a real brotherhood there?
Oh,
You know what I'm saying?
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah, because
absolutely.
they were having such a great time. The experience was a true experience. It was a different experience down a Splash Mocha.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and it was smaller, grouping. And so I think too, knowing that they were all there for that purpose to be a
Yeah.
part of a cuckold dynamic, with the exception of us who were just helping, at the event.
Mhm.
So
And let me say this.
just knowing that they were there for that, it was a very focused time. And then when they're talking to each other, they all know they're there for the same purpose for the same thing. So it was
Exactly.
so that
Exactly.
made it easier than going to Splash. You're like, hey, like, what kind of dynamics are you into? What's there for.
Here's Splash is speed fucking. That's all the fuck it is. That's what Splash is. Although great, it's
Yeah,
speed
and
fucking.
then
We all know that.
The
Okay, you
the
don't
more
get a chance.
intimate gathering was where it's at,
As
I
a
think.
bull, you do not. As a bull, you do not get a chance to master your craft at Splash Mocha. At smaller events, you get a chance to master your craft, and they got a chance to actually be what a bull is supposed to be at Utopia. You know what I mean? They met, they had great conversation, they interacted with, not just sexually, but they actually acted with. They got to know these couples on a whole different vibe, physically, emotionally, So it was the total experience.
Right, there was time.
Exactly. There
Well, it was time to slow down and interact with other bulls more.
Exactly. And the bulls had to exude patience. You had to have some patience there because, like I said, you had couples there that were, you guys told me that there were some veterans there, and then I think you had some ones who had never been to something like that before, correct? Exactly. So they had to be patient, for me, and let nature take its course. So that was the perfect event for those 9 or 10 guys who went. Regardless if they were seasoned vets or if they were just getting into the the Bull Brotherhood. So yeah, that was good. That was great.
I want to give Michael C his flowers. So what we're talking about is the Club Utopia. It's on the keysandanklets.com or keysandankletspodcast.com website. And him and Blonde by the Bay put this thing together. We were just there as kind of helping them. They did a really good job of selecting the right bulls, and he also created a Telegram group, to keep everybody's privacy, and that these bulls can talk to each other, and they were able to kind of talk to each other and get to know a little bit about each other beforehand. And so what I saw is that they started forming friendships and bonds right away. You started seeing guys that didn't know each other beforehand. They were hanging out the whole weekend on, times resting in between play and in between the events and eating and stuff. And you saw them really bonding and connecting. It was dope.
Here again at smaller events where you just got 8, 9, 10 guys, it really is, you guys get to practice what being brothers all about, like fraternal brothers. Like I said, Splash, you got 100 motherfuckers there. Hell, it's all about damn competing.
Right.
You're competing. You know what I mean? You're running from one to the other. Oh, I saw this one, but he grabbed up. So let me go to the other one over here. You can't enjoy what being a bull is really all about at those big events. They're fun, don't get me wrong, they are fun. I'll never downgrade Splash. I love going to Splash. But now I love being the kind of like the voyeur at Splash and just watching everybody, how they operate, especially the guys. But at a smaller event though, when you get to really practice your craft, you get to hone your skills, that's perfect. So, here again, shout out to Michael C and shout out to you too, for having a great damn event, and I won't miss the next one. I certainly won't.
Yes, sir. All right, Unc. Well, I want to kind of end it up with I got a little grid for y'all. If you guys can kind of picture this grid, the square, circle, and triangle grid. I don't know if you guys want to talk about something else, but I just kind of want to share that to kind of give people a little visual in their head that they can picture. If you're going to look at each shape, each one symbolizes something and each one is a typical dynamic. And then there's what an ideal bull trait could or recommended. And I really like this. So as far as the square, that symbolizes balance and reciprocity, right? The typical dynamics usually are swingers or the swapping mentality. And the ideal bull trait to me is charismatic guest bull. If you walk in a square dynamic, which is the least one you're going to get as a bull, right? It's going to be rare that you walk into that dynamic, but you can as a single male. You want to come in as a charismatic guest to that square, right? And then the challenge is you got to wait for mutual desire, right? You have to make sure that the male in that couple is comfortable with you. You got to make sure she's obviously attracted to you, that she's going to make sure he's good, that kind of thing. When it comes to the circle, it symbolizes flow and versatility, right? And these dynamics are open relationships, poly, stag vixen, it's flexibility, right? Now, the ideal trait for a bull is emotional agility and patience, right? The risk is of being ambiguous or confusing, right? So in a circle, there's a lot of dynamics, there's a lot of complexity to it. It's a lot of free flowing, and you really want to be emotionally agile, right? You don't want to have too many expectations or rules or parameters you have to work in. If you're one of those bulls that got all these preferences and I have, sensory deprivation, or I like it this way, or I need it that way, or I want the approach to be this way, or I only approach that way. I really don't recommend that because, you're gonna, it's not like every single, situation is going to be difficult, but for us, you have to be versatile with us being Stag Vixen, because you might come over and I might say something and I'm going to go in the backyard and, put my fire and chill, or I'm going to come in here and watch some Star Wars, like Siren said, or I might be involved, or you might be at a party and I'm throwing a party and I want to make sure that everybody's getting their individual needs met. So you want to be versatile. To the triangle symbol, that represents tension and polarity, right? Now, the dynamics are cuckolding, hotwifing, structured, Stag, Vixen, right? The ideal trait for the bull is dominance, leadership, and being intentional, right? When you come into a cuckold relationship or Stag, Vixen relationship where he is relinquishing power as a stag or a cuck, you want to be intentional. You want to have a fucking game plan, right? And I like the word leadership as opposed to dominance, right? I think dominance is the description you describe of what it looks like for a leader to lead, right? Because dominance is not about being mean or aggressive or not considering what that person's concerns are. It's about leading them through a scene or through a relationship in a way where you can navigate everybody to ecstasy and fun and things being safe.
Can I say something?
Yes,
Can I
sir.
say something right there, nephew? That was why I said what I said earlier when I did say you can be dominant or expected to be dominant, but you don't have to be dominant. Okay, because remember what I've said. Remember what I've said in the past, ladies and gentlemen, and my fellow bulls out there. Confidence breeds dominance. If you go into that situation as a confident male, as a confident bull, then it's going to exude the dominance. Okay, they're going to automatically, both the wife and the husband will immediately submit to you and let you lead from the front. So that's why I said you can be dominant going in there, but if you're not necessarily the one that exudes that dominance, at least be extremely confident. Because like I said, you go in there confident, it's going to automatically turn to dominance. So go ahead now, nephew.
Yes, sir. I just want to finish off with one quote. Your lifestyle dynamic reflects the shape of your energy. Squares are about equality. Circles are about expansion, and triangles are about power. Know your shape
Great points.
and master.
Great points. Great points. Great points. And a great podcast for this evening. Great podcast. Anything you guys want to say?
No, that's what an end quote is for. Put an exclamation point on it.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to close this one out for this evening. As always, I'm the Sigma male, Brian Morgan, along with the family, Siren and Socrates, coming at you from the Bull Brotherhood Podcast. We will see you another time soon, hopefully within the next week, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And as always, in sounding off, to my brothers of the Brotherhood out there, good night. And to my sexy sirens, hotwives, and unicorns, good morning. Until we meet again, y'all.
Oh yeah, claim the mind, train the body on the soul. Deep connections built on trust. Let's all go from conversations to the passion that we hold. This brotherhood's for men whose stories need to be told. This brotherhood's for men whose stories need to be told. You'll say it loud. This is who we are, bold, confident, and seductive, dominant and classy. We stand tall, never fall. Bull Brotherhood, luxury untold.